My only hobby that doesn't include cars is visiting national parks. They're the most beautiful parts of our country. But on my most recent break from filming car reviews, I went to Glacier National Park in Montana, and something caught my eye. Red vintage buses. They're everywhere, and you can buy them on anything. Shirts, mugs, magnets, ornaments, snow globes, knockoff Legos, socks, water bottles, pins, earrings, and even wooden toys. So, what makes them so special? Well, that's what this video is all about. To understand the buses, we first need to talk about the National Park System. Founded in the late 1800s under the order of Ulysses S. Grant, the National Park System was designed to protect parts of the United States from poachers, manufacturing, and trading. The system came over 100 years after the founding of the country, so most of the East Coast had already been developed. That's why there's more parks out west. For the first few decades, there wasn't any infrastructure to support them. No park rangers, no visitation system, and no roads. The parks were originally protected by the US Army, but with World War I on the horizon, a switch was made to dedicated park rangers, which is why rangers today wear military-style uniforms. I promise we'll talk about cars in a second, but when the roads and paths began to be built in the parks, there needed to be a way for people to visit. And that's where the White Company stepped up. The White Motor Company was founded in 1900 after Thomas H. White found his steam engine car to be too unreliable. His son Rollin White set out to build another steam engine, which he achieved in 1900. The father and son duo started the White Motor Company to sell these steam cars out of a corner of the well-established White sewing machine factory. A 1907 White steamer was one of the first motorized vehicles at the White House and allowed the Secret Service to follow Teddy Roosevelt's carriage. In 1911, the White Company abandoned steam engines to pursue the increasingly popular gasoline engine, and after World War I, they abandoned car production to focus specifically on commercial trucks. They would build trucks and tractors all the way up through 1980, where they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. This came after nearly 2 decades of poor sales, and most of their American assets were bought out by Volvo. White buses were the first vehicles to ever take visitors through the National Park System back in 1914. They were simple shuttles and nothing more. Although white buses were purchased for several national parks at the time, Glacier National Park had a unique issue: going to the Sun Road. It was completed in 1933 and is one of the most stunning drives I've ever taken. Any modern economy car can handle it pretty easily, but this was not the case back in the 1930s. In order to get across it, vehicles had to be tough and the drivers had to be tougher. That's what led the parks to purchase the White Model 706. A 5.2-liter straight six was under the hood, which was a White-designed engine that made 94 horsepower. They featured rollback roofs for better mountain views and seating for 17 plus a driver. They decided on the color red based off of the mountain ash berry found in the park. They were purchased for $5,000 each and were bought throughout the late 1930s. The park bought 17 of them in 1936, 11 of them in 1937, 4 of them in 1938, and 1 in 1939. They were nicknamed the Red Jammers, not only for their color, but they all had unsynchronized transmissions, which meant that the operators had to jam them into gear. The drivers themselves earned the nickname of gear jammers and were said to be thrill-seeking individuals that could be rough around the edges. As soon as the first shipment of buses arrived in 1936, they were given an important use: A huge forest fire broke out near the Many Glaciers Lodge. With danger looming and fire raging, the Red Jammers were called into action to evacuate guests from the lodge. The workers volunteered to stay back and were able to save the wooden building from the falling embers by drenching the towels and linens in the lake and draping them on the roof. Although the building was saved, the investors were pissed because America was still in the Great Depression and they would have gotten a huge insurance payout. They were so upset that it didn't burn down that they sent a one-word telegram to the building's manager. But getting back to the buses, the Red Jammers saw regular use from the 1930s until the 1980s, where their unsynchronized transmissions were swapped out with modern, at the time, automatics. This made the downhill driving much safer, but the buses lost the gear jamming sound of which they had been named after. They also paused their touring from 1943 to 1946 due to fuel rationing for World War II. The Red Jammers service on average about 60,000 visitors a year and is one of the oldest touring fleets still in use. Only one of the buses has ever been totaled. On June 29, 1977, 4 gear jammers took a bus out on a joyride around midnight. They sped along the dirt roads and past the park ranger. The ranger reported that one was yelling out the window. There was nothing else suspicious, so the ranger let them go. Somewhere between 1 and 3 a.m., the bus's right front wheel came off the road and dug into the embankment. The driver then tried to correct, ended up overcorrecting, and the bus flipped over, throwing 3 of the men out of the canvas top. One jammer was trapped inside and was found unconscious in the luggage compartment. One person in the incident did succumb to his injuries and passed away on the way to the hospital. His name was Bill Kelly. He was 27, and it was his first season as a gear jammer.
Bill, I hardly knew you. Sure, you were a friend of a fellow jammer, a guy with a smile on his face and a heart for fun, someone who enjoyed having a good time and who wasn't afraid to take risks. But when the 4 of us got tersassed out of Jammer Bus 100 as it rolled that June night, it was as if someone had thrown 4 dice out of his hand, and when they landed face up on the table, one of them showed death. June 26th comes around on the calendar every year, Bill, and with it come painful memories. I just wanted to let you know that 2 holes in my heart are still there, one for Red 100 and a bigger one for you.
The bus was beyond repair, but you can still see some of the salvage parts from Bus 100 at Jammer Joe's Cafe at Lake McDonald in the park. So what's the current status on the Red Jammers? Well, you can see 33 of the original 35 running all over Glacier National Park every day. One was crashed beyond repair in 1977, as we just mentioned, and another one is at the park's headquarters. Rides vary in price and location, but it's very easy to book a spot. While the bodies are original, the Red Jammers have actually been significantly overhauled since their original conception. In the late 1990s, stress cracks were found on one of the bus's chassis, which led to the discovery of cracks on almost all 33 Red Jammers. All of them had over 600,000 miles on them. They were immediately taken out of commission with no plan to reinstate them. However, the Ford Motor Company stepped up and pledged over $5 million to fix the buses. After 2 prototypes, Ford slowly converted all Red Jammers onto Ford E platforms. Basically, this ambulance but without the body. They got the 5.4-liter Triton V8s as well, which could run on gas or propane for cleaner exhaust in the park. However, I talked to one of the drivers here in 2024, and he said that they don't really use the propane system anymore due to the high price. Ford lengthened the e-chassis to fit the original wheelbase, as well as added fiberglass fenders and modern headlights. It ended up costing about $140,000 per bus to fix. From what I could find, there were plans in 2018 to use Ford's newer hybrid system to make the red Jammers more efficient and cleaner, but due to lack of funding and the global pandemic, those plans have yet to be implemented. You can also find similar buses running around Yellowstone National Park, and they have the same cult following. Even the restaurants sell kids' meals in yellow buses. So, if you ever find yourself in need of stunning views, amazing wildlife, and vintage buses, I can't recommend Glacier National Park enough. It's truly something to see, and the Red Jammers are truly something to experience.